Every time I watch anything Star Wars, I want to like use the Force to like pull the remote closer to me or anything like that. But the only time it works is when my eyes are closed and my wife is being nice to me that day. Okay, so maybe it doesn't work, but we'll show you how to do it with VFX.
So for our effect, we wanted to go with the classic Jedi using the Force to pull the lightsaber to him from far away. The first shot is a close-up of the lightsaber hilt on the ground, moving and levitating up, then being force pulled out of frame. So we first placed the camera on a tripod pointing down at the ground to get a clean plate of where the hilt would be laying. Brandon and I then stood off screen and used our lungs to simulate the wind, and in retrospect I'm just now realizing that we did have a drone on set with us that probably could have worked better, but I guess it does make for some good content. That's hard. After that, we set up some green screens outside for the hilt shot in the same environment in order to match the outside lighting. We placed one green screen in the background and one in the foreground on stands to help balance the hilt for a cleaner rotation. Matching the camera angle as close as possible with the angle of the ground plate, we shot Brandon holding the end of the hilt and rotating it on the stand to simulate the hilt levitating upward from the ground. Now, because the hilt is somewhat reflective and our green screens are two different hues of green, we unfortunately ran into a little bit of trouble getting a clean key and elected to use the rotor brush tool with edge refinement instead. The fact that it was on green screens, however, still came in handy since it provided contrast, which helped the rotor brush work cleaner. You can check out our rotor brush video in the top right hand corner if you want to learn more on how to use it. Then we animated the position and rotation off screen to make it look like the Force is pulling the bottom of the hilt toward our Jedi Stephen. Next, we needed to create a shadow so that the hilt actually integrates with the scene properly. In a new comp using our rotoed clip as a reference, we duplicated the layer and flipped it horizontally, placed it underneath the original, then created a dark gray solid and set it to be an alpha matte of the flipped layer. Then we added a simple mask with feathering on the top half for some fall off while the hilt is on the ground. After that, we animated the matte layer to move and rotate underneath the hilt and fly off screen in a mirrored fashion along the ground plane. Then, turning off the reference, we brought the shadow comp into the main comp. We added a CC vector blur set to direction fading with the angle pointed down along the ground plane, and then set the vector map to reference the clean plate of the ground so that the shadow follows the luminance detail of the grass and leaves to blend more realistically. Then we duplicated the shadow layer and adjusted the blur and opacity levels to make the shadow a little more dense closer to the body of the hilt to match how a real shadow looks. To finalize the shadow, we animated a mask with a high feather to taper off the front end as the hilt rises, so it feels more natural, leaving a little thicker of a shadow toward the bottom end of the hilt that's closer to the ground, and a more faded off shadow for the top end that rotates up further away from the ground. After that, we turned on motion blur for the position and rotation animations, and added CC motion blur to the hilt so that the actual filmed movement feels a little more integrated properly. Then we finished the shot off with some simple color correcting to match that of the clean plate. For the second shot, we had Stephen fly his drone to grab a wide clean plate that we could then animate the hilt flying through the scene past the camera. We then took a still frame of the hilt from the green screen shot and animated it in 3D space with position and rotation, starting from far away and then coming in close past the composition boundary with motion blur enabled. Then, to just help integrate it with the scene a bit more, we added a shadow on the ground by duplicating the hilt, adding a dark solid, track matting it to the duplicate, dropping the opacity down a bit, scaling it down, and adjusting the position animation to be lower along the ground plane. For the third shot, we placed the camera behind Stephen as he reaches out for the hilt, and basically did the same steps as we did for the second shot, animating the same green screen hilt shot in 3D space toward his hand with a shadow layer along the ground. And the last two shots of the sequence are just simple mid and close-up shots of Stephen catching the hilt, which we threw to him from off screen and then just cut on the action with a quick zoom in. This one's a mid shot, and then the one where you turn it on is going to be more of a close-up.
Okay, yeah. I was just wondering if I need to put pants on and shoes.
We won't see your feet, I don't think, right?
I don't think so, yeah.
No.
You know, I don't know very many Jedis that run around with shorts on.
Yeah.
So that's what I was, you know.
Then, using the Saber plugin from Video Copilot, we just did a basic lightsaber animation and motion tracked the hilt and then applied that tracking data to the blade. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe and check out this one that YouTube thinks you'll really like.